a social experiment enterprise. Stop, listen, share. Everyone can make a difference. We are on a mission. Everyone should do something greater in their lifetime. Change the future. Be a proud member. Join us to support, volunteer, and donate. Stop now.
Welcome back to Stop Now. I'm JK. Now that we have a brand new year ahead of us, I think we should make the most of it, don't you all think? I know that many of us feel trapped and overwhelmed by the last year events. Sometimes it felt like all we could do was to crawl to the finish line. We all know that so many of us were suddenly restructured out of our previously stable jobs and now into search without any warning. So what are we trying to do this time? So this is a call-in show. I invite everyone to join us in the Zoom call, or you can call us. You have the number on the screen displayed. So just do what is in your heart. Do what's right and have fun. That's all I'm going to do this week. I'm trying to invite an immigration attorney, and this is going to be more fun. And I am trying to have help with my hosts and my team, Nate and Melissa.
Thank you so much for joining us. We are back with another exciting conversation that we're going to have this week. So many topics, so much going on in the world. And so we feel it's proper and it's right to kind of take a stop, take a break every now and then, take a pause for the cause, and sit down and get into the meat of some of these issues with people who are experts in the field. And so this week I would like to bring on an expert in the field of immigration law. He is an attorney as well as a professor. He hails from Los Angeles, so who knows? He might even be an actor, for all we know. But it is my pleasure to bring on John Khosravi. John, how are you doing, my friend? And Happy New Year.
Thank you, Nate. I appreciate it. Happy New Year to you too, and thank you for having me on the program. I hope we could share some information and learn from each other.
Yes, I think that's one of the things that we've learned this year, or should I say last year, is that there's so many experiences that people have and areas of expertise that we might not know. And so the only way we can find these things out is by having conversations. So I guess we can kind of start with how you got into this field, John. Like, can you give the audience a little bit about your background and why immigration law is so important to you?
I kind of just fell into it. It wasn't, it was literally important to me because my parents immigrated here and I was born here, but just like most Americans, I had no concept of what immigration really is and how difficult it is to get work permission, social security number, permission to live here. I graduated law school in the first year or two. I went into investing, and then a colleague or just a family friend of ours needed a translator, and I read and write Persian fluently. So I went there and I realized, I could help run his firm. I practice, I'm a lawyer and I could help run his firm. So he was an immigration lawyer, and I started doing that, and I fell in love with it because it was just so interesting, the work we did and the kind of people we dealt with. And my work is in the news all the time. It's like when I see billboards of clients, I see my clients in headlines in the news. So it's like behind the scenes, I'm really moving the mechanisms of the world. It's fascinating. Like one guy in a room, I'm sitting here, I'm making things really happen. So it's a very powerful thing. It touches upon so many people, and it's such a innate part of America and what we are. And in my opinion, really the greatness is we either have the talent come here willingly or unwillingly, unfortunately, and historically, but we brought all the toughest people in one place, and so that's what makes it a really awesome place to be. We're rough around the edges still in America, but again, we're bringing the best that there is here, and that's what makes us dominate. And then we have an aura of openness, of speech and stuff. I mean, this conversation we're having right now, you can't really do it in most countries in the world. You be censored or you get some backlash. But as long as we keep that free speech open and this communication, and we have strong people, I mean, we're set for the next century.
Well, I love that you kind of characterize America in that way, John. Like, I've always kind of thought about it as, it's a great idea and an ideal. We've never really hit it in our country's history, I don't think. But we're making progress. We're striving towards that more perfect union. And another thing you said was, having talented people willing to come here. And so let me bring in another talented person who is joining us today, my co-host, Melissa. Melissa, how are you? Melissa has finally arrived.
I am here. Yes. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right. I'm going to try it again. Hi, John. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Well, and Melissa, thanks for joining us. I get to see you.
Expound on that.
Yeah, so I mean, what kept me going is just the people, and then I realized like there's a lot of work to do on a business entrepreneurial aspect. It's a sleepy area of the law. Personal injury, criminal, it's very flashy, and there's a lot more money. And so what happens is most of the people that become immigration lawyers are either people that really want to work on humanitarian kind of stuff, so they don't get paid that much. There's a good chunk of people who are there to abuse immigrants and try to steal their money kind of thing, because it's a population that can't complain much. And then there's just random people like me who fell into it and fell in love with it and kept with the help people. And I don't do as much humanitarian work. I usually help either people who get married or people who are starting businesses. But I do training in that, and the humanitarian aspect, the trafficking is an important part. And I mean, I mentioned Nate earlier, trafficking is different kinds of ways of happening. It's, there's sexual trafficking, there's, kind of slavery kind of trafficking. But, we talk about the H-1B off the air because you had talks about this. The H-1B visa, a person has to work for a certain company to stay here. But that creates issues of trafficking of source, because they're afraid that if they talk back to the employer, if they do something, they'll get fired. Then they immediately have to leave the United States. They may have, bought a house or rented a house. They have a lease for a year that have paid. They may have kids in school. So all of a sudden, there's pressures of like, oh, I got to appease the boss, because if I don't, my whole life's going to look topsy-turvy. And so these issues exist with, these lighter forms of control that could happen on people that I don't like, that are part of the immigration system, part of the regulations. And it's hard to really fix them. But my always idea of movement of people is, the free movement of people, where, you have to bring something to the table. If you can't come to the United States, just say, give me some money. And I've had people call me and say, well, how could I come to the United States, and how can I get a check? I'm like, well, there's a lot of people who need that check too, and they're paying out of their taxes for it. That's not a proper way to do it. But there's a lot of people who want to come here to bring their talents here. And I think in interviews, I always mention that, we have a military that's very powerful, and we go and bomb people and kill people to control them internationally. But I think the most powerful thing we have is we take the best and brightest minds from people and we suck them out of those countries, and so they get weaker and we get stronger. So immigration was what allows that. And we look at all the various defense contractors, we look at all the tech companies, we look at every major corporation, there's an immigrant or a child of an immigrant running the place. And so I mean, it's pretty consistent. When you go Alphabet, who runs Google, the Google guys themselves, it's just consistently the case where we have these people that come here. And obviously there's Americans that was born here, but it's a big chunk of it. The reality is, so why not open the mindset to bring these kind of people here to help continue America's dominance, if you will, throughout the world.
Before we get into the different types of visas and some of the things that you're working to improve in the system, can you just kind of talk about maybe some of the misconceptions that I think maybe a lot of Americans have when we talk about, the immigration issue? Like, what are some things that people don't really understand about the work that you do?
Well, there's a perception that immigration, there's some sort of line, and they say, get in line for it. There's not many lines, and it's really a restrictive process. And the government and the rules we have are really restrictive too. It's very difficult to come to the United States. There's a high barrier, both with regards to your background, who you are, and your finances, all this kind of stuff. So it's not an easy thing to come to the United States, and it's not easy to just come here and take benefits in that sense. So that's one of the main things. The difficulties people have to go through to become immigrants and eventually citizens is extremely hard. And people who do become citizens especially, they're wildly patriotic, and they love America, and they want to make it better, and they want to, most of the time, put aside where they're from even, and bring the goodness of it, but really become part of the American culture and experience, and try to add to that. And they really come out of this innocent kind of love for trying to make the place better. I mean, we're born and raised here, so we have, we're kind of been burned by it, seeing the reality of it, and we're not naive maybe to say, or wishful thinking, because we've seen the nastiness of it. But when they come, they've seen the Hollywood image, and they come here, and then they have opportunity, and they come from a country where they make no money, there's abuse and all this stuff. And just the fact that there's some money and some less abuse to them is a much bigger thing. We have, again, as you said, we have these ideals that we're in school, they teach us and they push us, so we expect much higher. But they bring that energy in and wishful thinking, and it keeps revamping it when we get a little skeptical, which is natural.
I have a question on that. So you work primarily on the immigration side of it, right? So you will be the right person, because we had like other guests, H-1B visa holders, and even attorneys, and there is always a controversy over there. So what do you think on that? Like, because it's a non-immigrant visa, right? How is it like being tied to the immigrant green card process, and why they are doing that? Because some people call that as a modern slavery, right? As you said, like they are kept under the constant threat of fear of losing the job and getting deported. Why is that H-1B is like so tied to the employers?
Yeah, that's the way they designed it. The employer controls things, and even if like there's a denial in the case, it's very difficult for the foreign national to appeal it or go through a lawsuit, because they say it's the employer's case. And the way they designed it is, it's hard to fix it properly, but it's especially bad for Indian nationals, because the majority of H-1Bs go to Indian nationals, and then eventually an employer, for example, files for their green card. For Indians, it could take, or people that are not Indian nationals, people that are born in India, it depends on your place of birth. So if you're Indian and you're born in Dubai or in Russia, you're not bound by this. But there's such a big backlog of people born in India that you could come on an H-1B from India and then have that. They apply for the green card. It could be 10, 20 years before you get your green card. And your presence here in the United States will be tied to that employer. Sometimes there's some routes. Luckily, about 20 years ago, they fixed it so you could transfer it to another job. But you have to have another job lined up that's going to be, doing things right. It's not as easy as just switch jobs. And so you're stuck with it. And the way just designed it is it's employer-based. It's not based on the foreign individual. There are some certain immigration schemes that I work on, like there's an extraordinary ability green card. So who's a popular example? So if you are great at, let's say you're a computer developer that's really top and you've done great work, there's an extraordinary ability or a national interest waiver, two different types of green cards which you can apply for to be able to on your own stay here. But again, for people from India, those are backed up and there's long delays. But for the most part, you're stuck with this employer and they control the system. And if they don't like you, they could fire you and you're out. You got to leave. And so it does create a system where you have to abide by what the boss says, or there's too much risk.
So what kind of I was going to say real quick, like what kind of legal recourse is there for somebody that's on this visa that is being taken advantage of or being done wrong by their employer? Like what can they do?
There's Department of Labor. You could always, sometimes it could be, if there's rise to the level of a crime, you could contact state and federal authorities, criminal authorities. There's Department of Labor issues. Sometimes the abuse is strong enough. There's certain visas for people who are victims of abuse, like the U visa. But for the most part, like the fear of having to go back or losing what you created here. Now, when you have the H-1B, in essence, when you get it, it's a non-immigrant visa, which says I'm going to go back to my home country once my work here is done. So you're coming in with the idea that it's temporary, but in reality, and the government has acknowledged this, there's a good chance that you're going to end up staying here, get a job. So when people do come to H-1B, there is part of their dreams that they're going to stay here in their life planning. So at the end of the day, even if there are, and this just happens with people, for example, who are in abusive relationships with their spouse. If a woman, and it goes both ways. I have clients right now who are men being abused by their wives, but the typical thing we all know is like a woman's being abused by her husband. Where is she going to go, if she complains, and if there's abuse? So she's kind of stuck in a system because it's very difficult to get help to get out of it. So you just deal with it. Now, there's a lot of people on H-1B. There's a lot of good companies. Majority of them are not doing any kind of abuse. But it does lend itself, it opens the ability to do this. And so I haven't thought about how to write the laws exactly, but that has to be taken in there to give some more freedom to the foreign national. So they're not so much under control. We don't want people in America, we got to wait with that system, an employer controlling a person. And so the more we go away from that kind of stuff, the better, even if it's a lighter version of it, even though it's usually not abuse. I don't want to have anything that lends to that in any form of employment in the United States.
So do you think that there's ever going to be a way that we completely get away from this altogether? Like, is there a way that this is all going to end?
I mean, President Trump is trying to shut down the program entirely. In some ways, he has in 2020. But it depends on how you want to make these employment schemes. Like Canada has a system where if you're educated, you speak English, you're a certain age, you have money, all this kind of stuff, you could just come here, and then if you find a job, that's an extra plus. So there are different immigration schemes that work in different countries. America's immigration scheme is primarily created after World War II, which is first bringing families together. So it's you apply for your parents, your siblings, potentially if you're a U.S. citizen, spouse or children. Secondly, it's employment based, and there's different categories. There's like an investor one. There's if you have extraordinary ability, but a big chunk of it are these employers filing. And this is a system we've had, in changing these kind of systems. Just bureaucracy, making a small move is difficult, let alone a big one. And there are people who are happy on their H-1B. So if we change it, all of a sudden they'll be like, I was happy with what we had. Why are you changing it? So it's really hard to do. President Biden is going to be coming in on the 20 in a few weeks, and so he's talked about immigration reform. Immigration is so complicated, and there's like 50 different immigration programs that to do a wide-scale change of it, even small changes, are really hard because there's no good answer. So I don't really see immigration changing other than little tweaks here and there. It's just too hard a thing to even imagine. I sit and think about stuff all day, and I have a program called the L-18. The U.S. government has a program called the L-18 intercompany transfer, where if you have a foreign company and that's big enough, and there's a U.S. company that's associated, like a subsidiary or a sister company, you could transfer that employee from abroad to the United States. And the the denial rate of these has gotten really high under Trump because they're finding problems with it. It's a very complex program, very expensive. I charge a lot of money to do it. But we have like a CEO who needs to come and visit the United States to check on the company. He can't just do that without getting a full visa. And he's had to jump through so many hoops just to come and check out his company. And so how do we make this easier? I'm like, whatever we make easier on one certain type of company, it makes it harder on another one. So it might be easier for a big brand like IBM or Apple because they're really big to say executives come here. But there's smaller companies that may have 20 people in the U.S., 20 people abroad. They still, have operations. But the government, if we make it easier for them, it'll make it harder for the big companies. And just all these kind of things. There's always winners and losers. And so it really just goes down to politics of, who's got more lobbying and they'll get the benefit. That's the only way we've been able to find conclusions to this kind of stuff. Who has more power and connections and money to pay for it or buy it, actually.
When you brought up the name of the outgoing president, it brought to mind one of his more famous statements. Fortunately, you can't see him on Twitter anymore, so that's one good thing this year. But it brought me back to when he was talking about the people from these S-hole countries.
Yeah.
And just kind of that thought process and that ideology. Within the immigration system, do you find that there is kind of that bias where if somebody's coming from Europe or a place like that versus, Mexico or somebody coming from the Middle East, is there bias set up within the system itself that needs to be fixed?
Yeah, there's bias, and there might be some statistical basis on some of these decisions. So obviously, if you come from Europe, Japan, Australia, it's much more easy to go. Canada, it's just everything's smoother. One thing I run into a lot are people from Nigeria. If they come to the United States, get married, file for a green card, their cases get backed up consistently for years because they accuse them of fraud, saying they're fraudulent marriages. Now, they may know something internally that they have a higher rate of it that they're basing it upon. I was talking to a person that used to work the embassy in Nigeria, and they're like, Nigeria they have what they call high fraud embassy. So the people there bring a lot of fraudulent documents. Like that happens in Pakistan, it happens in Nigeria. And everyone gets denied there. They don't believe their marriages, they don't believe their relationships or the employment, and they just say, if someone from those countries brings me documents, I just assume the document's fraud. So they feel it. It might be some sort of statistical basis for it, but at the same time, my clients are really married. They're really in love.
Right.
It's not fair to get caught up in statistics and some other people's statistics. I'm from the Middle East, and I've had to deal with racism and stuff, and in different ways. And I'm like, I'm me though. You can't judge everyone the same. But when you have a big agency, that's how big blocks of agencies work. They don't look at people as individuals, but immigration is such an individual thing. They look at it in the grand scheme, And depending on who the leadership is, when the leadership in the last 4 years it's been what it is. Yeah, definitely. The travel bans themselves were a major issue. I mean, for example, the travel bans were against countries that they claimed terrorism would happen to. So Iran was a major part of it. But when you analyze the level, the statistical number of terrorists that came from Iran, which is almost zero, if not zero, as opposed to Saudi Arabia, who was not on the travel ban list, which was the main person from 9/11, which was like all the countries that are involved in 9/11, none of them on the travel ban. Only the countries who didn't do 9/11 or terrorist attacks on direct U.S. soil afterwards. So it's politics. There's all this kind of stuff that it really kills people, because I have couples who are, married and they're apart for 3-4 years. I had a client. She has multiple sclerosis, was pregnant too, and her husband in Iran was waiting for 3 years. We have to file a lawsuit eventually until they open it up. And it's like, dude, they're both doctors too. And this woman has MS. She's pregnant. She's waiting for her husband to come here. She would go back and forth, and on one trip, she's getting pregnant. And it's just sad, a pregnant woman crying in front of you because she just wants her doctor husband to come here to be at the when the baby's coming. That's about it. So it's a wild situation. And they're dealing with like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So it's a difficult thing. I always give it to the immigration departments in the sense that they just have a tough time. Like an immigration officer at the embassy who's doing an interview for visas, for example, they could do 100 to 150 interviews in a day. So they only have like 2 minutes of time to judge something. So, they're just going to go by their gut. It's just going to happen. And it's hard. The system's not just designed for this. And so there's bias. There's just natural inclination of like just trying to get things done. So all the gamut of negative stuff, of racism is there, but there's also just difficulty practically. So it really just depends on the day of the week that what you're dealing with. And it's just hard to fix. And that's why I don't think it's going to get fixed. It's just more of the same is going to continue.
Like you were saying earlier, like a lot of these mechanisms were set up, after World War II. Yeah. And it's like if you had a car that you bought that was made after World War II, it's probably not kicking right now unless you took really good care of it. And so I think there's a lot of things that we saw from this past year, John, whether you're talking about, the judicial system or, the way police and law enforcement work. Like there seems to be a need for the system to be reconfigured. I just don't know how we're going to get there.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, it's really good that you mentioned it that way, because like when I do cases, this is I've in 1970 when I file a case with the government. It's all paper. I can't have digital stuff. Nothing's online. I mean, very few things are online with them, and so it's stuck in that. And when I think about to prove how a relationship is real, we got to do it how it was in 1950, where a guy makes money, a wife does this, and like that kind of format we're always thinking about. And it's hard to update it. But before this call, I was talking with a vendor for immigration products that sell digital services and stuff, and he was talking about his business. And it's just so hard to get people to make the step into trying something new. It's like my wife's grandma has a phone and she's on Facebook. She's like 80, but she uses Facebook. But my own grandma, she has a flip phone and can hardly dial on it. To kind of push her to use the phone and see how much opportunity, how much fun, and she's bored at home doing nothing. She go online and read a bunch of stuff, have fun. But getting people to move, it's just human beings kind of being lazy, or something being so new it's hard to do with the technology. And so it just pushing people across is really hard. Sometimes you have to be forced into it. And humanity is the way people don't evolve until they're forced to. It's really a life and death situation. And that kind of sucks. Evolution requires that kind of pain to push people to do it. Starting my own firm, at first I had no business when I went solo. And I was like, dude, I got to make some money. And so that fear of like not being able to pay the bills caused me to figure it out. And that's just how it works. It has to be some sort of massive pain that forces us to figure it out.
And I think that might be one of the few silver linings of 2020 is that the way we do business, the way people go to work, like the way a lot of folks make a living was changed, and a lot of it had to be done online. A lot of it had to be done through things like Zoom or Skype and stuff like that. And so, maybe having to deal with this technology for the last 9, 10, 11 months will force people, maybe to evolve and change and modernize a bit when it comes to systems of business and, other infrastructure like that.
Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I think you always got to look at the bright side. There's always a bright side to everything, however bad it is. And that's the only thing you can do. And so I agree.
So I guess before we kind of start to wrap things up, John, can you let the folks know, if there's somebody watching, if there's somebody listening that has an issue whether it's with their visa or it's a citizenship thing. Like they need help, they need advice. Like what would you do to instruct them? Like, these are the people you need to get in touch with. This is how you need to go about taking those steps to make sure you can stay here.
Well, one of the things is there's deadlines on this kind of stuff. So I have people sometimes who don't start moving until it's too late. So first thing, if you have an issue, get on top of it. Don't put it off, because there are hard deadlines. And President Trump, man, he's changed some deadlines without telling anybody, from 30 days to 15 days. So if you have a court hearing you want to appeal, overnight they change it to 15 days of time from 30, and then tell anybody. They just put in this 200-page booklet, and if you saw it, you saw it. So it's just really nasty stuff they're doing. And then do some research yourself. Try to understand what's going on, because I see this in a lot of people just in life. I was watching. There's on YouTube. You probably watched it with Vlad TV. He does interviews about the hip hop stuff. And he's talking with like, he had a lot of problems, and one is like he's a good rapper, good musician, got talent, got charisma, but like he was working in Atlanta under control of Cash Money, and then he left them. He went to Juvenile, and Juvenile left him stranded in Los Angeles. Then he joined G Unit, and G Unit pretty much looks like completely screwed him over continuously. And it's like, he's an individual person. He should have taken control of his own finances. From that first time he got screwed over and didn't make money to do it. And that's the same thing here. It's like, learn about your immigration case. It's
Young Buck,
yeah. Young Buck's awesome. And so, but he went to prison for all stupid reasons, and his reputation's got bad. But take control of it. Go online, see YouTube videos, see what's going on in your case. When you go talk with a lawyer, if they're just trying to steal your money, or they know what they're talking about, or if their strategy is good or not. And with immigration, you'll talk with 5 immigration lawyers, and you'll get 5 different answers, and 3 of them will be good answers. They're just different ways of doing it, and 2 of them will be lies. So you got to be able to differentiate. Have the patience to talk to 5 people, but then understand which one sounds the best, which one's trying to pull your leg, which one's charging too much, which one's trying to rip you off. You got to do the homework, because the only person going to protect you is yourself. And you can't, lawyers, their job is to be there for you, protect you. But as we know in this world, you got to first trust yourself and trust your own judgment.
John, on that note, right, I had a question, right? Law is also a business, right? Attorney is trying to rip you off by saying different things. So that is one of the things, say, like, what is right? Because many controversies are coming up. One of the H-1B visa holder, he was saying he's challenging you bring on any attorney, and he says that I can also do business. I can also do whatever I want here. Is it true, or is it legally allowed?
No. As an H-1B holder, the only work you can do is the work that the government has approved, which is usually with that employer. Any other type of work in the United States essentially takes away a job for an American, or is work that you're making money, is a status violation and could lead to removal or deportation, as they used to call it. Now it's called removal.
Wow. How come, like, he is saying, he's openly challenged in our show, saying that, like, you bring on, like, I will debate. So that's why, like, I'm asking you this, like, because I don't want to take much of your time.
Yeah, but it's like, we'll talk more about it, but it's a very serious thing. If you go and tell at the airport, the CBP authority, that's the Immigration Airport, that you're working on other stuff on H-1B, they're going to put you on a plane and deport you and give you a 5 or 10 year ban if you tell them that. So that's pretty cut and dry. Now, listen, like, if you buy a house and you put on Airbnb, and so it makes money like that, and you have like a team that manages it and does the cleaning up of it and deal with that, that's fine. It's an investment. So you could buy stocks and stuff, essentially, or buy businesses, but you can't work in a business unless you have specific employment authorization to do that work. Anything else, violation, government finds out, they could put you in removal and send you out and kick you out of the country. That's pretty straightforward. Like, that's that. Yeah, it's very.
A lot of moving pieces today.
Yeah, but I like talking about ideas and stuff. That's what I enjoy the most. I really appreciate Nate and everyone else on the team that set this up.
Yeah, thank you. That's the immigration attorney, John Khosravi, and we are coming to the end of this week's show. Let's grab the 2021 by the horns and make sure that we leave the craziness of the previous years behind and move into a bigger and better things. So till we have the next show, which is going to be a more debatable one, I'm trying to bring in both the attorneys and the H-1B visa holders to debate on our show. and find the solution to all these controversial things that we discussed this week. Hope you all enjoyed. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.
Stop Now, a social experiment enterprise. Stop. Listen. Share. Everyone can make a difference. We are on a mission. Everyone should do something greater in their lifetime. Change the future. Be a proud member. Join us.